And now, your host for this evening, the Rolling Stones.
Hello, welcome to On a Friday. I'm here with my co-host Matt. So we are the Rolling Stones. We are getting a name change. Don't worry about it. We'll cover it in the next episode. Anyway, we're here to talk about the Get Back Disney special, Disney Plus special,
Yes.
directed by Peter Jackson.
Directed by Gandalf himself.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't know why they called it Get Back. They should have called Lord of the Rings 4, you know?
So anyways, we haven't done an episode in a hot minute, and this isn't to signify our grand return. We just wanted to discuss the Disney Plus, the Beatles Get Back special, because it's really good, and we're both really big Beatles fans, and when we do come back, eventually I want to use one of my album picks to do Let It Be, the album which this special shows essentially the creation of. But for now, we just kind of wanted to discuss the special itself. I'm sure we'll discuss more about it come time for that episode. But there's a lot here. This thing's freaking almost 8 hours, and I totally watched it all in one sitting last night because I have no life.
I didn't. I watched it about a month ago in like 4 or 5 sittings because I have nothing.
It's the 3 parts, and each part is pretty much movie length, like between 2 and 3 hours.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's really a lot to get through.
Yeah. My God. Yeah. God. I had to. Sometimes I would cut it right after the day ends because I'd be like, and it'd be like maybe like 9 or 10 p.m. and I'd be like, fuck, I really need to sleep. And so I'd finish the rest of the episode eventually. Like the
had
next
I
day.
not watched all of it at once, it definitely would have been a matter of like watching an episode at once, because I if I'm gonna start something, I'm gonna finish it pretty much. But like when it came to like the Hulu special McCartney 321 earlier this year, there were 6 episodes of that. I think I watched them all in one night, but it was split into 6 parts.
Hmm.
And this was split into 3 parts, and they're all movie length. And like even like when I had like an hour left in part 2, I was like, man, I might just go to sleep after this part and then finish it in the morning. And then like by the time part 2 ended, I was like, I have to watch part 3.
Yeah.
I have to. It's so good. Gosh.
It's almost funny how well it picks up like at the end of part 2.
So I guess to give some context, this special shows back in January of 1969, the Beatles were pretty much like, hey, let's pretty much make an entire album and do a live show that we haven't done in 3 years and set all this up in like 3 weeks, pretty much. And so all of it was filmed and documented for the sake of like a TV special, which eventually was changed into what was supposed to be like a documentary film, which eventually became the Let It Be film in 1970, which was released alongside the album, which was made in this. It's a whole mess. We'll discuss more about that come time for that episode of On a Friday. But this shows the full process of them making it, because the original Let It Be special cut out like significantly. It was probably, I don't know how long it was, probably around 2 hours instead of 8. And the big thing about it was because it was so like late in the Beatles' career, it seemed to like focus on like the negatives of it and how much like tension there was between the band members. And this, like, by showing more of the like full picture, you can see that like, no, it wasn't just that. Yes, there were like a lot of rough patches, especially at the end of part 1, Jesus Christ. But it was also just like, it was good. It was a fun insight to see like how they worked as artists and just like how they really, really felt about each other as people at that time in 1969, like tail end of the Beatles' career.
Yes. All right, Matt, take it.
What do you mean take it? So because I just watched it, Andrew seems to expect me to like remember everything that happened chronologically and just expect what to do.
No.
And he just sent me a DM. I don't know what's happening.
I just sent him a picture of
me something. What is this? Oh, okay. Okay, George, take it. He was making a reference that I didn't get. Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
How do you want to do this? This is super unstructured. We didn't prepare this.
Yeah.
We're just talking.
Let's talk about the first part. It takes place.
So before we get into that, I want to say I really like what they did with like the opening, like showing like sort of like highlights from like the Beatles like whole ass career, and then playing a bunch of like pre Let It Be songs from like I'm looking at the like list of all the songs they played in the special, and it goes from like In Spite of All the Danger as the Quarrymen, which was on Anthology 1, I think, all the way to Blackbird from White Album, and then picks up at Twickenham Studios where they initially planned to like film everything.
Yeah. I remember the first episode, I watched it in about two pieces. I remember going into it really excited, and then I was kind of like, I mean, don't get me wrong, by the time I finished it, I was still kind of, I felt very about it, if that makes any sense. Like, the first episode's good, but to me, there was a lot of everything to get through.
Well, I think that's the thing about it, right? Because I'm not like a big documentary fan, like at all. Like
Hmm.
I'm really just not a big fan of just like an informational movie essentially where like people are telling me like information about what's happening. But this isn't so much that, because it's not like it keeps cutting to like different interviews of people. It's just showing what actually happened. So I was thinking like, yes, I was like, ooh man, I bet it's going to be so good, but not in the sense of like this is being made to entertain, but rather like this is what happened.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is actual like footage of what happened in the making of this album, documentary, live show, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I approached it with the sense of I remember watching that sneak preview that they posted about a year prior, and I remember, oh yeah, if it's more like that, I'm gonna enjoy it, and I mean, it was that and a little bit more. I remember some bits of the first part really being very enjoyable to me, and especially how they were highlighting like a movie being made out of it, and the whole thing. I found that the director was really pushing for that one scene that was like overseas or whatever. You know? You remember
Oh
that?
yeah. So when they were trying to like decide where they were gonna do the live show, the first live show in 3 years that the Beatles have done, because like they stopped doing live shows after like the 1966 tour, which was like not disastrous, but it followed John's like, "Oh yeah, we become bigger than Jesus" comment, which had a lot of like backlash. I think that played no small part in why they stopped touring. But that's when they started doing stuff like Sergeant Pepper and White Album, Magical Mystery Tour, Yellow Submarine, where like they made more music that like they didn't need to perform live. So they tried a bunch of like weird different stuff, but now they're making this new album music of songs they could perform live and are going to perform live, but they hadn't like already decided how they were going to do it. And so they're like the dude leading the documentary filming was like, "Hey, what if we did it on like this, what was it, like a cruise ship thing going
It was a
to."
cruise ship, but before I think it was that after a while, but then before the cruise ship idea, it was like this place. I don't remember what fucking place, but he kept talking about it.
Yeah, he really wanted to do like an overseas kind of like live show, and then eventually it was like, no, let's do it like at this place in London. Then they were like, no, we can't do that. Let's do it on the rooftop of our Apple Studios.
I really want to know what that place was because it was said so many times over the period of like the first episode, and maybe like a little bit was it, and maybe a little bit in the second episode. The second episode was split between being in the old studio and then into the new studio, right?
Yes,
Okay, okay.
because so the culmination of episode one comes down to George leaving the Beatles. like they're like rehearsing, I think it's Don't Let Me Down. And then George is like, I think I'm leaving the band now. And John's like, when? And he's like, now. And he just gets up and he's like he just leaves and he's like, get it, find a new person, find a new guitarist. And he just goes, and then they're like, well, fuck. And then
Okay,
they kind of just
George,
have to,
take it.
yeah, okay, George, take it. And they kind of just have to deal with that. And I just want to say this is like it's one of my favorite parts, and I love that they ended part one here, how they played Isn't It a Pity from George's album All Things Must Pass, which is interesting because like that wasn't a like that version of the song. It wasn't the version from the album, and it definitely wasn't a version that they did in the Get Back sessions, Let It Be
Hmm.
sessions. It was like, and I know I've heard it before, and I can't remember when. Maybe it was on the Early Takes 2012 album that George Harrison did, or maybe it was on the 50th anniversary of All Things Must Pass from earlier in 2021. Which, by the way, Happy New Year! I guess this probably won't go up until January. But yeah,
Welcome
um,
people in the new year. Very
wow,
scary.
it's the 53rd anniversary of the Get Back sessions.
Hooray!
But yeah, I loved how they used "Isn't It a Pity" because that whole song is about like the difficulties he had like with like having to break up and like leave the Beatles and stuff. And like that's the song they play to end out part one. And then it says that Paul, John, and Ringo tried to like organize a meeting with George at Ringo's house. And the last like line of text in part one is the meeting did not go well. And then credits. It's just that's a crazy way to end it.
Oh my
And then in
god.
part two, they discuss like how that went, and then eventually they do they get back together, and end up like, hey, if we're gonna do this, we should restructure everything how we're thinking this. That's kind of when they decide we're not gonna do a TV special, we're gonna do like a movie documentary thing, and when they're like, let's move from Twickenham Studios, where they were doing it before Ringo was gonna film a movie there, Magic Christian, yeah. Then they moved to just Apple Studios and they recorded the rest of it there.
I have to say, like, the first part and the half of the first, or I mean, the half of the second part, there were some really sentimental moments in there, especially the end of part one and then in the beginning of, like, I think part two, I believe. Because, like, Paul is making a joke about, like, the Beatles splitting and then realizes, oh, I just said that,
It might happen. Yeah, yeah.
And the realization of that weight is like, Jesus.
And it's a couple lines. The whole like because I think Paul says it a couple times. Like then there were three, and then like the day after George leaves, John shows up late, and then he's straight like then there were two, and you can like see Paul almost crying, and it's like oh, it's heart wrenching. But just like the discussions then, because I think that's also the point when they like talk about Yoko a bit and how like
Oh yeah. Yeah,
how
they're
like
gonna
they
make
don't
jokes of
actually have a problem with her because like everyone like the historical like things like oh Yoko broke up the Beatles
in 50 years
because like
time they're
oh
gonna be like
she and
Yoko broke up the band because she sat on an amp.
but yeah even Paul's like no Yoko's fine and everyone's saying like oh she's gonna be the one to break up the Beatles but like no it's all right and like just also seeing her just there in like these sessions like she's not being intrusive she's not like causing tension between the members or at least that's not shown if she did in the thing but like and what ultimately I think broke up the beat because it's super interesting that this is the album that got filmed the making because like it comes right off White Album which was just like probably the most tense they ever were with each other as far as like what's been documented because it was like post like India and that's when they wrote all the songs which George got a lot out of but like most of the others like didn't really get much out of it and like just the songwriting process of that and it being a double album just how much like some of the others just didn't like some of the songs like I think everyone but Paul hated Obla Di Obla Da but like following that really like negative like sessions for the White Album and then we have Let It Be but then after that we have the actual final album recorded yes Let It Be was the last one released but the final album recorded was Abbey Road and that's was actually the last one and then they broke up that's actually the one that like made them break up and I don't think it was necessary I don't super know I don't think it was necessarily because it was super like negative making Abbey Road but more just like hey we've done all we can do and we all want to pursue solo stuff now let's just mutually decide to end it. And I think especially with how like you can see especially by the end of part three they are happy around each other making music with each other and it's like I can't believe that these people like broke up so like harshly especially with we discussed in the Ram episode just how many like diss tracks there were between Paul and John but even like Paul claims that like by the time John died they had made up. And like
Yeah.
because you can really see in this that like these are four guys who like they love each other and they love making music with each other and I don't know it really reshapes the whole narrative of like this era of the Beatles and it's dope I think.
I can safely say that for me, I never thought much about the Yoko shit, to be honest. I just knew that basically they broke up and that was it. And I grew up playing the Beatles rock band, and that basically taught me everything I knew about the history, sort of, to some extent. Obviously, I did end up going to Wikipedia and then learning more about them. To me, it didn't it just served as context, I guess, for that entire period of time. And I really enjoyed was it the whole process of watching Get Back. It very much felt like I was just hanging with them, and especially when was it episode 2 was when Get Back was recorded.
Yes, when Paul came up with Get Back on the fucking spot.
Yeah,
Cause
yeah, he's
here's the
just
thing
fucking noodling on his
about,
fucking bass.
and not to, I don't want to say too much to like spoil my thoughts on the songs that ended up on Let It Be, but like they brought in a bunch of like, it's not that this like 3 weeks they had essentially from like the start of the sessions to like when they did the live show and when the album was supposed to be done, because when they were supposed to be out of Twickenham Studios or when they no longer had the film crew or whatever the deadline was. It's not that they wrote all the songs, had to learn the songs and then rehearse the songs. For the most part, it was a lot of just like rehearsing the songs and uh, recording and like learning them for the live show. Because a lot of times they came in with them already having been written and then had the rest of the band members learn them. Get Back was not like that. Get Back was very much, and it's such a good moment in part two when Paul was just like, "No, I had this idea for this like tune last night," and he just starts playing it, and that he just starts like playing the riff for Get Back and like humming sort of the melody until he starts coming up with some words, and like
Yeah.
we see pretty much the whole creation of the song Get Back, and it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say, like, the music recording process, at least for me, is very much like that moment. It's just magic. And
Yeah.
I live for those moments, really, to be honest. And it's really exciting seeing a much more experienced songwriter come up with a song like that just so quickly, and everybody else picking up and playing like instantly, basically.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but
I
like
don't
the other
mind.
day we had a discussion about lyrics and
Yeah, yeah,
like how like lyrics are written essentially, and like pretty much my only advice was like maturity. Pretty much, I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
like maturity in lyrics, and like I think that a lot of times it's a matter of like, hey, you don't have to go with your first draft for lyrics,
yeah.
like you have plenty of chances to like do rewrites and like not just like to like maybe mature it up or just like make it just better in general. The thing about it, that first moment when Paul was like humming the tune to Get Back and like coming up with words to it, like of course it like goes through a bunch of different stages where they like change like some of the names of like Loretta and JoJo and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
it went from being like a riot song or like an anti like protest song
yes.
to
Yeah,
like
and there was a time when they tried to make it like a protest song, but even like that first time when he's like humming the tune to it, you can like hear him like start to say some lyrics, and those first lyrics he says make it pretty much with like minor changes make it into the final song, and it's like those those lyrics in particular had no rewrites.
yeah.
And like that's in like because like Get Back isn't a particularly like deep song since they changed it from being a protest song, but like it just works because Paul can do that. Paul McCartney is one of the few people who can do that, where he's just like writes lyrics and that's it.
But
It's
yeah, yeah,
good,
yeah. But
you know.
on the same side of the coin, we get "Wonderful Christmas Time." Also, guys,
That's a good song.
please.
What the fuck?
There's not. I mean, hey, the moon is right.
The spirit's up.
But don't get me wrong. I mean, I love "Wonderful Christmas Time," but it's probably the one the. It's oh god.
Are you about to call it the worst Paul McCartney song? Because we're gonna throw hands.
No, no, I think the worst Paul McCartney song is "Temporary Secretary," but I still love that song. I
No,
mean,
that
don't.
song's also good.
But here,
It's good ironically,
actually, you
but
know
it's
what?
good.
I think my least favorite Paul McCartney song is "Fuck You." Actually, I take that back. I take everything
Bro,
back.
bro, Wild Honey Pie.
What?
Honey Pie! It's on White Album.
I, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I have yet to listen to the entirety of White Album. It's 2 hours long.
crap?
I listen.
You watched an 8-hour special on Let It Be.
Yeah, I watched an 8 hour special, but I don't have enough time to dedicate myself to a 2 hour album. Okay.
We have gotten so sidetracked.
Hey, I mean, it's still the Beatles. It's the Beatles.
It's still the Beatles.
We're still
It's
talking the Beatles.
Also, I disagree with his opinions on For You. I like For
Whatever.
You. I think there's worse songs
Yeah,
on
fuck
Egypt
you.
Station alone.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
I'm saying fuck you.
I'm saying fuck you.
Whatever.
But yeah, Get Back being written is like one of the best parts. It's such a highlight.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it.
I thought that another, well, for me, obviously, I'm going to talk about the I'm gonna talk about part three. Part three as a whole is probably the biggest highlight for me, to be honest. The whole like everything coming together, haha. And
They
just
say come together so much, and I thought it every single time, but they hadn't written that song yet.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah. Because to me, it's like such a weird thing. Because I was like, I was thinking about Abbey Road in the process of watching the entire thing, and I was like thinking, well, some songs were ended up being like made around that period of time. So when I heard Maxwell Silverhammer, I was like, oh, so this was made a little bit earlier than I expected. And so when I heard
yes.
like something, or was it something, right?
Yeah, they did start to write something at this
And
time. There's a very short scene, but they do start to write something.
like all of that happening around this time is just to me like kind of boggling, because like I never followed this period of time very well. I just kind of acknowledged that it has always existed, and so to see it like bits and pieces of Abbey Road in this documentary is also kind of very interesting to me, because obviously we know what the final product is, but how
Yeah.
they got to that final product, I mean, we don't know, but we know the beginning of it at least, to some of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there's kind of like four categories of songs that like you can find in this special, not including like the opening segment that has all the old songs. And that's like when they're like messing around with like older songs that have already been on albums. I think like a highlight for me was when they did Love Me Do, in that played in the part 2, in the credits of part 2.
Hmm.
They played like an updated version of Love Me Do, and God, I wish there was a studio version of that. I haven't listened to like the special edition of Let It Be that just released like earlier 2021.
Hmm.
But I looked at the track listing and it doesn't have that version of Love Me Do on it. I freaking love Me Do. I want that. But yeah, they mess about with like old songs to do. I think they do Help at some point and like stuff like that. And then there's songs that made it into Let It Be onto that album. And then of course there were songs that are on later albums like Abbey Road or like their solo albums. So like George does All Things Must Pass.
Yeah.
They even, in fact, this is when we find Backseat of My Car from frickin' Ram, which we covered in an earlier episode of On a Friday.
Yeah.
We see that start. And then what I find is the most interesting, songs that started as demos in earlier sessions before this. So like if you look back at the like Escher demos, which were compiled with the 50th anniversary edition of the White Album, you'll see that Child of Nature, which eventually became John Lennon's solo song Jealous Guy, Mean Mr. Mustard, and Polythene Pam, which ended up on Abbey Road, were demos around the time of White Album. And both of those are featured in this special, along with other songs that didn't end up making it onto Let It Be. They made it onto Abbey Road. So yeah, just seeing like how many songs are pulled from just like everywhere that we get like new versions of, or just like updated versions of, or versions of that like won't be finalized until far later. It's wild.
I haven't actually listened to the Escher demos yet. I haven't listened to the back half of the White Album, the 2018 mix, though.
They're very chill. And I like them.
I'll keep that in mind. I'll probably take a look at it later, which is also code word for maybe eventually.
Never. It's code word for never. He's
that too.
Never listening to it unless I make him on the podcast.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna pick the super deluxe version of White Album 50th Anniversary Edition with every bonus disc. We're gonna discuss every demo, every take.
Oh God, I can already feel the episode like doubling
7-hour episode of On a Friday. In fact, we're gonna make it an episode that's longer than the Get Back special.
Oh God, wait, longer than 8 hours? What?
Longer than the Get Back special, 8 hours.
It better be fucking edited by Peter Jackson, otherwise I'm gonna be disappointed. Dude,
if we had the money.
If we get the money.
Peter Jackson, you want to edit our podcast?
Peter Jackson, please give me a call. Make Hobbit 5. This could be Hobbit 5. Don't worry about it. We'll just make it.
Is there even a 4?
Thin Air. This is Hobbit 5. We'll get, what the fuck is his name? TK Rowling? No. Wait.
JK
wrong
Rowling?
person.
Who are you talking about? Wait, are you thinking of the freaking writer of...
I said it wrong.
Said TK Rowling, J.R.R. Tolkien.
I meant what the fuck is his name?
Tolkien.
Oh my God.
J.R.R. Tolkien. You said frickin' the Harry Potter lady. You said the transphobic Harry Potter lady.
I'm gonna crumble in my own seat later. Don't worry.
Can we get back to where we once belonged?
That was so bad. That was terrible.
So yeah, I guess we're kind of talking about all the parts now. Part two ends with them kind of like making a decision about where to do the live show, and like by the end of part two, they've decided, hey, let's do it on the rooftop of the Apple building. And then part three goes into like the last couple days of like rehearsals, and then shows the entire uncut rooftop performance.
Yeah, yeah. You know
It's
what?
absolutely brilliant.
You know what confused me? I don't know why they didn't do it on the road, you know?
See, I think part of it was like, hey, we're gonna be like disruptive and noisy, but we're not gonna like block traffic. But it is interesting to me because like I never actually like I'd probably seen like bits and pieces of the rooftop concert from like YouTube or whatever, but I'd never like actually processed like, oh, no one could see them. Like no one on the street could see them
Yeah,
because
yeah, but
they weren't like on the edge of the roof. They were like in the center of it.
I hope you realize this was a joke.
Oh, you were kidding?
Yeah, because, you know, why don't we do it on the road? You know, the song.
Why don't we do it in the road? I will say, I don't know. I think it was part two. It might have been part three. They start like talking about like India and like their experiences with it.
Oh, yeah.
And like,
are you going to talk about what
and
George
they show
said?
some footage from the film. Yeah, George, because again, George is the one that really liked it, and George like, I don't know if this was intended as like a bit of like aggression or whatever, but he was like, I can't remember the actual quote, but he was pretty much saying that like the whole idea of it was to like not be who you are essentially, and like to like grow beyond that, and like I don't know.
They wouldn't be them now if they weren't the way they were back then.
Something like that.
Something like that. It was very philosophical. And
George is fucking brilliant. He's such a brilliant man. I just listened to his whole discography like last year.
Oh shit!
Probably since we stopped doing episodes of On a Friday, actually. But he's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, they show some like footage from being in India. I don't know if they like made a film with it or what. Because they were talking like they did, but I can't really remember. But Paul was talking about this time when he saw these two monkeys and one comes up behind the other and just starts humping it. And that story is the inspiration for Why Don't We Do It in the Road from White Album.
I thought,
and I just love that we got to hear it firsthand from him.
Wow, I forgot about that in the What the fuck?
There's a scene in Get Back with monkeys humping each other.
Wow. You know what?
Wow, indeed.
It brings new meaning to everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey.
Me and my monkey. Another great White Album song about monkeys.
Yeah. I'm I can't.
Anyways, the rooftop concert.
Yeah, the rooftop concert. My God. I wish there were less cuts to it. I really was hoping that would be the full performance. I just wasn't too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm
you
really
wish
happy.
they cut away to the other people less. You wish it was just showing the performance.
Yeah, I really was hoping it would play like the songs, like the whole songs. I guess. Like I didn't mind it cutting to people, but
they did play the whole songs.
Did they?
Yes.
I felt like some of it was like a bit cut off in some places.
I don't think so.
I don't know. This is my memory of me watching it last month.
I'm pretty sure they showed the whole like performance uncut, which first off, I will say I don't think they necessarily needed to do that because like they play what is it? I've Got a Feeling. They play that twice. They play Don't Let Me Down twice, and they play Get Back 3 times. And like if I'm not misremembering, like they play all of those songs. Like they play all of the performances, and it's like, okay, I'm not sure we need that, but they do keep like cutting to like people on the street like reacting to it and like being interviewed, and these two fucking police officers in their dumbass bucket hats with the weird like chin strap that only goes to their mouth. I don't know why. I don't know why UK police do that, but like they go in and they're like, "Oh, we've gotten like 30 noise complaints in like the past like half hour, and like y'all need to like shut it down." But they don't like realize that people are performing on the roof. It's really funny.
God, I thought that they the two policemen were. I don't know how they were stalled for that long. You know, they were stalled.
They were stalled for so long.
Yeah. I mean,
it was like a 30-40 minute performance that they were stalled for.
I find it difficult, so but funny. You know, they are the fucking Beatles. You want to be known as the guy who arrested the Beatles?
exactly. I mean, it's happened before. Paul's
I mean,
totally been
yeah.
arrested for like marijuana possession. But like, yeah, it's just so funny because like, and they're these young guys too. So surely like, like, God, I just. It's if hypothetically all I could think of while I was watching it is that like if I was there like at that time like I worked in like London or whatever or London
Liverpool.
no wherever Liverpool was it I don't know
No, they don't.
wherever they were doing
Wherever.
it yeah if I like worked there and like I was just like walking to work or like on my lunch break I wouldn't even care if I got fired. I would stop what I was doing and just like listen to the rooftop concert
I mean, yeah,
live.
that would be the only chance
It
in
would
your
be dope
life.
as fuck. It would be dope as hell and
You just neutered that
and like I
sentence.
get yes they were disturbing the peace whatever but like come on it's the Beatles. It's the
A reason
Beatles.
for firing. It took too much time watching the Beatles.
Spent 8 hours watching Get Back,
Oh,
was late for
Jesus
work.
Christ. Yeah, hey, HR wants us, HR wants you, to ask you a question. What the fuck were you doing on the internet for 8 hours?
What were you
I'm
using our
sorry,
company internet to do?
I was just watching, the Beatles.
They're back
Fired.
together, you know.
You're fired.
Oh yeah, but it's brilliant. They show the whole rooftop concert, whether or not they need to, and it's really fun. And then they show them like listening back to it, like in the studio, and just having a great time. And like they show a bit from the final day where they like learn and record the last couple songs for the album, and like just fail to mention that the album wasn't actually released then, and then went into development hell. But it's fine.
I think my favorite part was, at least throughout the entire Get Back special, was that it would always show that whether or not the take was actually used or not in the final recording.
Yes, they do mention which takes were used on Let It Be, which on the final album, which is really interesting and like makes me kind of mad because like when they're working, I don't want to give away too much of my thoughts on the songs on the album yet, but when they're working on Two of Us is not like that song is not in my Beatles playlist, just like spoilers. It's not on my Beatles playlist, like any version of it. And like I listened to all three like anthology Beatles anthologies earlier last year too. So even that version just didn't do it for me. And like the Let It Be Naked version, which is like Paul's like changing up like how it was produced. And for some reason, I guess none of the actual like studio versions ever did it for me. But just like with how much they went through it, I'm like, damn, this song's like catchy. Why don't I like this song? And there was one in particular, there was one take in particular they did where John and Paul were harmonizing like so differently than they do in any of the other takes, and it sounded fucking great. And if that's the take they went with, it would have been phenomenal. I would love that song. And then like when they play the actual take, like during the credits of part 3 on the final day, like and they're like, this is the take they went with on Let It Be. I was like, oh, that's why I don't like it. That's why I don't like the song, because that take is bad.
I God, I don't know what part. I know that they played the song many times, but I don't know about like the radically different harmonization of the what they were singing. I would like to get like
it
a
just
timestamp
stuck
to that
out
at
to
some
me.
point.
Yeah, I might go back and look for it for you, but like it just really stuck out to me because like it was so different and like they sung that song so much and I'm like, this is catchy. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's not the take they went
Oh,
with. Okay.
I do want to talk about this in the I believe the third episode. I took a little note of this one part where they were like playing Strawberry Fields, although it was like a completely
Yes.
different rendition.
And Paul was singing it.
I was like, holy shit, this sounds so good. And it was only for like 3 seconds.
It's funny. There's a YouTube video. I don't know who posted it, but it's like a compilation of all the times that like the Beatles, each Beatle like sang another member's like song that another one of them wrote or originally sang like with the Beatles or like their solo stuff.
Mhm.
And it's like now that we have these 8 hours of footage from the Get Back session, the Let It Be sessions, that video needs to be updated because there's so much stuff in here of like them singing each other's songs. It's brilliant.
I wish there was a longer version of the Strawberry Fields though.
Yeah,
I
Paul's
was
Strawberry Fields and also John singing Paul's like first song he ever wrote, I Lost My Little Girl. I want full versions of both of those.
I don't know. I felt like the rendition that they did with like of Strawberry Fields was like I don't know. It just really kind of reminded me of something that Radiohead I guess would pull off or something like that. To me at least.
Interesting.
I don't know. That's how I was processing it. Like my initial like when I heard that initially, I was like, holy shit, I want to go and make this. Because if no one else is going to do it, I will, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think as
I'm
like,
just honestly because they played most of the song, and I'm looking at the Let It Be special edition like track listing.
yeah.
Why didn't they put that on here? That's so good. Honestly, they should like I know they already did Let It Be special edition. They should release like a new soundtrack that has like even though it's a bunch of like snippets that has like these versions of the songs
You know what I'm
of
thinking?
like all the songs they did in the special.
You know what I'm thinking? Because the original cut was 16 hours.
Yeah.
If we ever get that cut, then it'd probably be in there.
A fully uncut Let It Be sessions, I don't think we need that. I don't know.
I mean, hey, as a director's cut, I mean, Peter Jackson's really going for it, you know?
I just
I
don't have
think,
the time.
I mean,
That's like
hey,
a full day of awakeness.
I mean, hey, if you sat for 8 hours, I can do another 8 hours, you know?
God. But I'd have to rewatch all of it, you
I
know?
wouldn't.
I'd
I would
have
just, well, okay,
Well,
yeah,
no,
that's true.
because if he released a full like 16-hour version, it's not like it would be here's what I originally did and here's all the extra stuff. No, it would be like interspersed to make it chronological. You would have to watch all of it. You couldn't just skip the parts you've already seen because you'd be like, wait, what haven't I seen? What have I seen?
Oh yeah,
It,
I was like thinking my mind went to, well, what if we just kind of had like the Peter Jackson do a thing where it's like, oh well, you've already seen like the Get Back Disney Plus special. Well, here's the other 8 hours,
like as a separate thing.
as a separate thing in case.
What I really want, and I heard about this in a video I watched earlier about the Get Back special by Elliot Roberts. He talked about how he went to like the premiere of Get Back. That was like this 100 something minute just like special like shortened version
Mhm.
that only showed like 2 of the days, including like the rooftop performance day, and then had like a special like intro from Peter Jackson,
Yeah, about the process of
like
how
sort of
this was
explain.
made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I want that. I want that on Disney Plus, and because it's like it's different, you know. It's a different like shortened version of it, and it like I want to know how it was
So
made because apparently it,
so
it
you
does
want to
cool like
collect all the editions of Peter
transitional.
Jackson's Hobbit 5?
Yes. And it
Okay.
has like this transitional stuff where it shows like here's the footage from the Let It Be documentary and here's how we like upscaled it to like make it different and like here's what we did to the audio and like that transitional stuff cuz that's not in the 8-hour 3-part version.
Mm.
It just shows it to us. It doesn't show like the how they made it, you know? And I feel like that'd be a cool thing for Disney Plus. And I read this somewhere. I don't know how like accurate this is because there wasn't like a source on it. I think it was on some Wikipedia page. They might be releasing like a remastered version of the original Let It Be
No, no,
documentary.
they are. They are. It will be coming to Disney Plus at some point.
Oh, I'm excited for that, dude.
Because that was the one
Like,
thing. Because initially, I think whenever we were told that the movie was going to come out, it was going to be its own thing. The Get Back thing was going to be its own thing, and it wasn't going to be
yeah,
like, oh, you need to watch this or whatever. And then it changed to we kind of wanted to like have both movies serve a purpose. So now there would be
yeah.
like a reason for that one to exist.
And while they're at it, if they don't mind putting like a Hard Day's Night, Help, Yellow Submarine, Magical Mystery Tour on there, I'd be fine with that if they just want to put all those on Disney Plus. That'd be neat. Beatles movie marathon maybe. But
God,
yeah, I
I'm
do
good.
think seeing because I haven't seen the original. I've honestly only of the Beatles movies I've only seen Hard Day's Night.
I've only seen Yellow Submarine.
I honestly, if they were more easily accessible, like if they were on Disney Plus, then it would be easier for me. But
I was trying really hard to convince my parents to buy me Yellow Submarine on DVD.
really,
Yes, it did not work.
they did re-release it like a couple years ago. So,
Well, yeah, but this was like a decade ago. This is like 2 decades ago,
Oh,
or almost 2
oh,
decades ago. I was like
that was
7.
probably hard to
Actually, no,
find.
I wasn't 7. I was like 11 or something, 10 or 11.
Dang, I mean that's the demographic for that movie.
Yep, I'm, yep, kid.
But yeah, I never saw Let It Be. So like seeing it now after seeing Get Back, just like seeing like it's the same like era, same like mostly same footage. Maybe I actually don't know if they used all the same clips or not. Well, not all the same clips, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
But like shown in a different light, kinda. And I also want to know like the footage quality from Let It Be versus the footage quality from Get Back. Are they just gonna like change the quality to be like it is in Get Back, but all the like same shots, like without like changing like the content of Let It Be, but using the upscaled quality? Because I don't think they have to, but I think it would be a neat like quote unquote remaster, you know?
I think that might end up happening, considering that we haven't had the movie just simply be re-released at the moment, you know? And I don't think there are
Yeah.
any licensing issues at this point anyway, because, you know, otherwise it would be out right now. And it isn't. So I'm thinking that it's probably being upscaled at the moment. We're talking, possibly. And if I'm wrong, I'll talk about it later. As for the other movies hopefully entering Disney Plus, I don't see why not. I guess it's just a matter of Apple negotiating stuff. Apple Corp.
Yeah. Apple Corp. I mean, look, if Paul wanted it done, he could get it done.
But yeah.
Paul and Ringo.
Paul,
Easily.
Paul, please. I'm begging you, please release Carnival of Light within my lifetime, please.
Carnival of Light. And what's the other one? The Palace of
I could give less of a shit about that one. I just want to hear Carnival of Light.
Hold on. I want to
I'm sorry.
because they played it was that that was also the credits of part 1. They played the Palace of the King of the Birds.
Palace of the King of the Birds.
The Palace of the King of the Birds. It was an instrumental they did during the sessions. And it's 14 minutes and 1 second. And the only official version we have of it was a version that Paul re-recorded with Wings for the Rupert the Bear like children's animated film, and it's only 1 minute and 42 seconds.
What the fuck? Where's the other?
Yeah.
Where's the other 13 or almost?
I don't
13.
know.
That's fucking.
But, well, I'll tell you where part of them are.
What?
Part of them are in the Get Back special, and if they would release a full soundtrack to that, we would have that. But all we have is the Let It Be special edition, which has some of that tracks.
I want a soundtrack now. I want like an actual.
I want
soundtrack.
a full soundtrack.
We're not gonna get that until like the 50th anniversary of this, you know. So they can make it.
I want it now.
Yeah, you need your money and you need it now.
I don't want to wait till I'm.
JG Wentworth.
Well, as of today, I don't want to wait
now.
until I'm 72.
Don't worry, you'll get it when you're 64.
Oh man, I mean, Paul and Ringo won't live, but like 2064, man, they could do some stuff.
Don't worry, the AI will be here. Their AI will.
The AI.
Yeah.
Look, I don't trust AI, but like if we were gonna put anyone's brain into like a tube and let them be a robot, Paul McCartney.
But that's if Paul McCartney is willing to do that.
Yeah, you're right.
We don't want to talk about the consequences of leaving human bodies and their brains out of their bodies, you know? We don't want to talk about the philosophy behind it. Otherwise it will get messy. Wow. You know, anyway, I'll tell you, anyone who has a bingo card, you can finally mark philosophy.
Robot apocalypse.
You can finally write that down. You can check mark it, and if you have a bingo, don't tell me about it. It doesn't matter.
On a Friday bingo.
On a Friday. On a Friday. On a Friday. Hey, can we get back
to where we once belonged?
Shut up.
Well, what else is there to talk about? Honestly, I guess we can talk about Billy Preston.
Oh yeah. Billy Shears did a really good job.
Not Billy Shears.
Billy Shears did a really good job throughout this entire thing. My favorite part was when Billy Shears showed up and punched Paul McCartney right in the gut for no reason in the 4th episode. Like
not.
What? There was a 4th episode. Did you not watch it?
There was not a 4th episode. You did this bit before we started recording, and I don't like it.
Why do you mean you don't like it? Billy Shears punched Paul McCartney in the gut.
So anyways,
told him to fuck off.
Because they wanted to record a lot of these songs like live, they didn't want to do it in like they did for like Sgt. Pepper and probably Yellow Submarine: A Magical Mystery Tour, but also White Album, where they recorded like all of the stuff like independently of each other and kind of like put it together to like form a final song in a way. And then but for this they really wanted to like perform it live. Even the stuff they didn't do on the rooftop, they wanted to like record it, like all of them playing at once like they did in the olden days, like a more traditional way of making songs. But they were like, hey, there's only 4 of us and we want piano, we want like more like another instrument. And so they called in freaking Billy Preston, who was like in town for like a TV show appearance. And there were like discussions they have like during like when he's not there about like potentially having like a 5th Beatle and it being him. And I think that's crazy that like they had this discussion themselves. Because like everyone like retrospectiving like, oh, who was technically the 5th Beatle? Brian Epstein, George Martin, Eric Clapton? Hope fucking not. Actually Pete Best, who was in the Beatles before Ringo, you know, but like they actually were like, Billy Preston, we could ask him to join maybe if we actually lasted more than like a year after this was being recorded.
Yeah. I thought that part was also really interesting because there was so like at that point in time there was just like this sense of optimism, you know?
Oh yeah, and I think that's the biggest difference between like Get Back and the Let It Be film. Optimism, you know? It's not like, oh, this band's fucking doomed, which they were. It's hey, no, they're having fun and they actually like intend to keep making music.
Yeah, yeah, and I because of that, even when there were like kind of darker moments and throughout the documentary, it still overall like it just kind of felt like, oh well, you know what, they might be able to get that themselves out of it, but you know how history goes, obviously. So
Right, they might be able to get back to where they once belong. And you know, speaking of get back the song, like the fact that when they were like when they first like finished like a full version of that, they were like, let's release that as a single in like a week because we haven't done a single in like 6 months. And like, I don't know if you know this because the single version is different from like the version that was released on Let It Be, because the fucking production on Let It Be is wild. But
mhm.
the single version of Get Back was released as the Beatles with Billy Preston. And Billy Preston appears on like several songs on the Let It Be album, but the single version of Get Back is pretty much featuring Billy Preston. And that's like crazy to me that they and like so like genuine and just heartwarming that like they held him in such high regard, and just like seeing him perform with them is like lovely. And like my favorite part of like his parts is when they did he with John were doing a like version of I Want You She's So Heavy, which ended up on Abbey Road, but it was like based on like Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech,
Mm.
and they were just like jamming to that, like this alternate version of I Want You She's So Heavy that I want on a soundtrack of Get Back, by the way. And it was just brilliant. I just loved Billy Preston's involvement with it.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. Yeah, I thought all the parts with Billy Preston were all phenomenal, really, to be honest, because it was like because like I remember it being so slow for at least like the first part and then a half, and then whenever his involvement comes along, I felt like the documentary picks up so much pace.
You know, you're right about that, and I didn't really think about it because there were definitely parts where like I was trying to like pay as much attention to it as possible, with it, all things considered, it being 8 hours. Like I only had like I like wasn't playing a game in the background. I just kind of had like Cookie Clicker running in the background and just letting it do its thing, and like occasionally clicking stuff if I needed to.
Cookie
Um,
clicker. Okay.
right. But like there were some times when I'm like, man, it's really hard to focus on Get Back and not Cookie Clicker because they are just playing songs right now and just like jamming away, not talking. Because I was mainly trying to focus on the dialogue to like get a sense of it. Even though like I enjoy the music, but I've heard a lot of these songs like a million fucking times. But yeah, I guess once Billy Preston did come in, I like started enjoying like just watching them play a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. I felt like it became very much more involved, much more involving thing once that whole thing happened. I felt like the documentary got way more enjoyable to watch, in my opinion, after that whole thing happened. I personally enjoy rather if I ever think about this like documentary, I don't usually think about the first half of the documentary. I always think of the last half because
I'll probably think of specifically the moment when George leaves
I think of
and
that
the end of
too.
part one.
I think
Like that was maybe the biggest highlight for me, just because the way it was framed was like so dramatic.
I thought the funny part was that they kept going without George for a bit, and then you had Yoko just screaming, and everybody's just like playing fucking
Yoko's freaking
guitars.
scream singing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
The captions say wailing.
What?
The captions whenever Yoko's singing, it just says wailing.
That's funny. That's really funny. Oh yeah, and I guess that's another thing I didn't like. I took a couple notes just to like remember stuff. I didn't take notes as I was watching, but I did like this
I
morning to
took
like
no
remember
notes.
stuff. Well, you had a couple. You had like timestamps.
Well,
Um,
I only had 3 timestamps, and that was it.
Something that I just remembered is the way they would selectively use like captions. Like, yes, there's like the closed captions you can turn on Disney Plus, but the way they would like when people were particularly like difficult to hear, or like when one of their like accents was like super like thick in something they said, they would show what they said on the screen. I love that. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
the like particular captions so that I could really like understand everything they're saying. Big fan.
yeah. I don't remember that, but I'm gonna agree with you because yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What else? What else? What else? There was when Linda brought her daughter Heather for a day,
Oh yeah,
and she was just
that was
being an
very
adorable
that
child.
was very heartwarming. For what
I loved it.
despite how like John Lennon ended up being like that entire period where like Heather's in the studio was just like weirdly warming.
Yeah, because the way she interacted with all of them was just like so like genuine. It was so genuine. and I just like so many like good like moments between them.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the when Heather like starts scream singing like Yoko, like you just mentioned, when she's like playing the drums with Ringo and is actually like pretty in sync, and just seeing Paul interact with her, like because like she's not Paul's daughter, she's Linda's daughter from her like previous husband, and like Paul ends up adopting her after he and Linda get married. Just like seeing like, oh man, he's such a freaking good father, and he's not even her father. It's just I love it. Let's see. There's one more thing I had. Oh yeah, so I guess I listed like the four categories of songs, but there was also like a secret fifth category that was like songs that they just kind of like came up with on the spot and were just kind of like random, like just little interlude things, which again, want on a soundtrack. But like particularly there was one where like I think Paul and Ringo, it may have been the day after George left, or maybe just before, like
Mm.
another day before George and John showed up. But it was just Paul and Ringo just messing around on the piano. Hold
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah. Well, they were in the first like that takes
Yeah,
place between like the first half of the documentary, right?
yeah. It was towards the end of the time at the Twickenham
Mm-hmm.
studios. It was called "I Bought a Piano the Other Day," and another thing I love is whenever they're playing any song, whether it was like on the album or a Beatles song or not a Beatles song, they show the name of it and who wrote it on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
That's brilliant.
That was a
I
fantastic
fucking love
addition.
that. But like specifically they even did that for these just random like little like things they did which never became full songs. Like I Bought a Piano the Other Day, which was just Paul and Ringo messing around. But on the screen it said Lennon, McCartney, Starkey, which was really interesting to me because it showed that like any song that Paul or John wrote, like around the time of the Beatles, unless they eventually became like solo songs for them, had to be attributed to Lennon McCartney. Even though John was not there for Ringo and Paul messing around, it still had to be attributed to Lennon McCartney Starkey, and not just McCartney Starkey. That I found that really interesting, just from like a legal standpoint.
Mm. I do too now. I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah, and I want that on a soundtrack. Thank you very much. Um,
Time to create bootlegs from the official film.
bootlegs, get back bootlegs. Oh my
God, we're gonna
god,
have new age bootlegs now after this.
new age bootlegs. Oh, I wish bootlegs. I mean, I don't because that would just like take
Apple
money away
Corp,
from
get
people.
off your
But I
asses,
want
please, for the love of
bootlegs.
fuck. Work
Bootlegs
on
on
another
Spotify
deal.
is what I need. I
Give
need
us some
bootlegs on
bootlegs.
Spotify.
Give us some
Well,
official,
yeah,
unofficial bootlegs.
yeah. That's kind of all I really have to say about it.
You know what? There's
I
one
thought it.
important scene we're forgetting. The flower pot one.
What?
Someone's gonna talk about it in the comments, maybe one day.
Yes, that is something I forgot to. Oh, that was another thing.
That
The
is a very
freaking
big thing we forgot.
when George left the band. It was like the day after. They didn't know if John was going to show up, and then John did. Paul was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you in the other room, away from the camera crew." They hid a fucking microphone in a flower pot to hear their conversation, which like isn't great that they did that, but for us watching it 53 years later, it's
Yes.
great. It's great. It's because
Oh,
it's so
everyone's
like
eating it
because
up.
you gotta wonder, and I was a bit worried about like us just talking about this because I wanted this to just be a more casual conversation about us talking about it, but I think it's turned out well so far. But like it's the thing about like knowing that like we're being recorded and other people are gonna see this, like filters what we say and how we say it. And I think a lot of the same thing could have happened with this, knowing that everything they were doing in these sessions was being recorded. Like, is this really them being genuine? And I think it was for the most part, just because like they were that big, you know, like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were just like, yeah, sure, let's just be ourselves, it doesn't matter. But like particularly with that, it's like they did not believe they were being recorded or anyone was listening. Let's hear how they talk to each other. And it was super insightful and just talking about like the reality of like, hey, where does the band stand without George? And why did George leave? Let's fucking talk about this.
Yeah, yeah. It was a wake up call for McCartney, really.
For both of them,
Oh yeah,
I
that
think.
too.
Because it was very much like, hey, this whole time I've been under the mindset that like you're the boss, but I think maybe George thinks like we're both the boss and he wants to have his own input and I've been trying to give him his own input, and it's just like that's just where you get when you are a not just a popular band, the most popular band in the world, and you're only four guys all with like songwriting abilities, including Ringo sometimes, with just like massive egos because you're the most popular band in the world, and like all have like aspirations to do your own thing. 'Cause there was even a point when George was like, "Hey, what if I want to do like a solo album of like me songs," which ended up being All Things Must Pass. And John was like, "Go for it, man. Like Beatles or not, go for it. Make your freaking solo album. That's fine." It's really like a matter of like mutual respect between bandmates and letting each other have like enough creative input where they feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And just hearing that uncut, unfiltered conversation because they didn't know they were being recorded. Like,
I mean, it was cut.
I'm not glad they were recorded, but I'm really glad they were recorded.
That full
so that
conversation
we get
was like a bit over. I think it was a bit over 30 minutes or something like that.
Oh, like
the
whole
actual
thing
conversation.
That they didn't show.
They cut a lot of it.
I believe that. Yeah, but just what they did show us was like, God, eye opening.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Brilliant.
Good luck to the person who cuts this into an orderly fashion. And for anyone who ever decides to make a chronological edit of this, good luck with that, because it's going to be very Tarantino-esque. This whole episode's very Tarantino-esque.
We're not doing that. I'm going to do...
I know you're not doing that.
I've said this in previous episodes. I'm doing minimal editing on this. How long have we been going? Let's see. We've been going for an hour. That's fine. That's fine. It's a regular on a Friday episode.
I mean, it's 1/8 of the entire fucking thing.
Yep.
No problems here.
Hey, instead of watching Get Back, watch this listen to this episode of On a Friday 8 times.
Don't do that. It's a waste of time. You'll probably get something out of the Get Back special.
You'll get more out of watching Get Back. Or doing both, and then it's 9 hours.
I can spend 8 hours watching a Disney Plus special, but I can't spend 2 hours of my life writing down notes and taking notes on an album with...
No, you can't. That's why we haven't done an episode in forever. But we'll get back to it. Oh, that wasn't intentional. That wasn't intentional. Do we want to reveal it? Because I think we're pretty set. We're not set in stone.
I mean, if you don't care, then we can talk about the Kiss album, I guess.
You know what? Why not? Let's give people a teaser. Who knows how long it'll be before we're ready to do episodes again. But let's do it. Next album, it's my pick. I want to do Music from the Elder by Kiss. Their most infamously unappreciated album is how I'll put it. But we're also planning a special episode with a guest, which I'm not going to reveal what that is, but that could be the next one we do theoretically, if not that. But we'll see. So in all likelihood, the Let It Be episode will be 6 episodes from now, because I don't know if it's been apparent, but I've been like, ever since we started the podcast, for my picks, I've been like alternating like newer and older albums.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think every other episode has been like an album since 2000 and an album before 2000, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I'm doing that, like my next album is going to be the Kiss album from 1981, 1980, 81. And then I want to do a more recent one from 2021, and then I want to do Let It Be. So I keep up the alternation. I won't do that forever because I'm going to run out of new albums I want to do. But like, that's why it's my third to next pick.
I don't care. Who cares about structure? We don't have structure here. You know, my favorite Beatles song is the one where they built a wall and then they had like 3 parts to it.
And now, your host for this evening, Pink Floyd.